What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of SSPN Postgame. And Ethan, we're here and we're about to be the most repetitive podcast on the planet because what happened just again? What happened just again? A close loss down to the wire. I know it kind of got away from the Spurs in the last 5 minutes there, but I mean, when you take into account that Trey Jones and Jeremy Sohan don't play the majority of this game, the fact that it was still a game late into the fourth quarter, with DeMontis having a big game. De'Aaron did what he does, getting 31, and Malik Monk had 22 and almost the most insane poster of the season on Jakob Poeltl late in the game. And you take into account that our leading scorer was Malachi Branham. It was actually a pretty good game. It was actually a really solid performance from the Spurs when you take into all of that, or take all of that key context into account.
We might as well, Jude, just put on the front of at the beginning of every podcast, just like a title card that says we played pretty well in the second quarter, and in the fourth quarter we really didn't score that well. Like our offense stagnated, and to give credit to Sacramento, they really kept their foot on the gas the whole time. It felt like for a second there, I think it got down to 3-point lead for Sacramento. We whittled it down with the help of Jay Rich, who's a big spark plug for us, especially with Trey Jones' absence, and of course Malachi, who led us in scoring, and Zach Collins, who I thought did a phenomenal job in the post. We were able to get it down to that 3-point lead, but in the end game, Sacramento is a better team, and they pulled out. I just think we couldn't match up against Sabonis' size, and that's nobody's fault. He's just a really quality all-star level center. 15 for 20 from the field, 1 for 2 from the 3-point land, 11 boards, 4 assists.
30 plus.
Yeah, you can't stop that man. And then De'Aaron Fox is just it just felt like too easy for him. It felt effortless. We couldn't stay with him along the perimeter. He was making really clean passes. And give credit to the whole team. The Kings were playing the right way. So when they're doing that, it's hard to beat them. But like you said, a lot of positives too.
I was just gonna say, it's like we played a team that's third in the West, and those are
Yeah,
their two
for real.
all-stars.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't, with the Kings over the past, however long, that really hasn't. It feels weird that it's the Kings because it's like you're still playing the Kings, but they're good this year.
Yeah.
I mean, 30 and 10
Oh, yeah.
for both of them in their respective categories. 10 assists for De'Aaron and 11 boards for Sabonis. And he had 2 blocks, 2 steals, and 4 assists too. But to talk a little bit about the positives tonight, I thought Zach had a really solid game. You could tell with his body language, he was getting a little bit frustrated, when he was playing basically the best defense you could without fouling. And it was like 3 straight buckets for Sabonis. But before that, and I was texting you about this, and Jakob really had one of his better games too. But I think that kind of has to coincide, not to take anything away from Jakob, but I think that also coincides with the injuries, right? We were just talking last night about how sometimes Sohan and Jakob get in each other's way. With Sohan out, that allowed, us to basically run the offense through the post like we normally do, or like we did before Sohan's emergence, basically for the rest of the game. But Zach I thought overall, if you pull up all the clips of the one-on-one possessions between Zach and Jakob matched up with Sabonis, there were more misses caused by Zach. I thought he was more physical, got bullied a little less. I will say that in the fourth quarter, Jakob came in and made some good plays against him. But there was a stretch there where it kind of felt like we were leaving Zach in there with the starters. And I think that had a lot to do with that. And he also took advantage of some mismatches against Chimezie Metu and some other people throughout the game. Just really got to showcase more of his footwork in the post, his baby hooks. Every game, it feels like Sean Elliott saying on the broadcast, he's just getting better and better. And I couldn't agree more.
It was just a positioning problem, I felt like, for Jakob. He was just letting Sabonis kind of, like, if there was space between them, Sabonis was eating that space more than Jakob was. I know he's probably trying not to foul because we need him on the court, but he's getting within 2 to 3 feet away from the rim. And if Sabonis is that close to the hole, he's going to make the shot. Like, there's just nothing you can do at that point.
Yeah. Well, obviously Malachi was our leading scorer, had 22 and 5 assists, 9 for 13 shooting, 3 for 5 from 3. Super efficient night, +5. The only dude actually in the box score for the Spurs. Well, no, Doug, Zach, and Malachi were the only guys in the plus minus
Big
who were
three.
plus tonight, right? Big three. But oh my gosh. Okay, just to talk about Zach and Doug a little bit, because you got them in my mind there. There was that one pass off where Zach like basically handed it off to Doug for the three at the top of the key and then immediately went into a screen. And it was like there was nothing else going on that possession. And I was just like, that was a really highly intelligent play there. So I got to highlight that. But going back to Malachi, I mean, really, when you look at this game and the looks that he got, it's like now the shots are falling, Ethan. And it feels like there is a little bit more arc on his shot as well. It's not as flat, but the rotation was always super solid. What were your thoughts on his game tonight?
Continues to look smooth, continues to look poised, finding baskets when nobody else can find a basket. I think that he has understood that our bench unit has had struggles just generating points in general. So he's able to create his own shot, find space, and make tough contested jumpers. Or he had a floater off the glass as well from like 10 feet out. Like this in between game, he has unlocked it and he feels more comfortable in it. And like you said, the shots are finally falling because that's really all his issue has been is just the shots falling because he's getting to his spots.
And he's great in catch and shoot too.
Yes, that feels a lot more smooth
and
as
automatic,
well.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Just another thing to talk about, I guess. One thing that we had kind of praised Keldon for just over this past stretch where Devin's been out is his fourth quarter scoring. That was kind of a little bit non-existent tonight, but
Yeah.
still, I don't feel like he had a bad game. I know he only had 18 points, did have 5 assists, and kind of had to take on a little bit more of that playmaker role with Trey and Sohan out. So you like to see that. Had 8 boards. I thought he was physical there as well. Obviously didn't have the best shooting night, but I still didn't feel like it was a bad game from him tonight. He still made some plays driving to the rim and showcased some of the stuff that we talked about in the live last night. Just the development and the added skills that he's had to his bag, driving to the rim.
Yeah, he was doing pretty well, I thought. I'm kind of surprised he only had 18 points. It felt like he was doing more than that.
Right.
But we talked about it last podcast as well. He's at his best, I feel like, when he doesn't have to be the primary ball handler, when he's playing off of a Sohan or a Devin Vassell or even a Trey Jones, and none of those guys were there. So I can see why he would only have 18 points, but he didn't play poorly.
Right. And a lot of those nights, the more I'm thinking about it, he's not going to have 5 assists when he's in that
Yeah.
position. So really, if you take out the 5 assists he had tonight, those are probably buckets instead. And then he's got another 20-point game. So
Yeah.
really, he was just kind of having to adapt to his role, which you love to see in that situation. Trying to think of just some other bright spots tonight. Before Trey got hurt, he was doing a pretty good. He had 4 assists and was doing a pretty good job defensively on De'Aaron. Forced a couple misses. Obviously, I think De'Aaron would have still ended up getting 30, whether or not Trey Jones played or not. But I, saw some good things in the 9 minutes he was on the floor. Sohan missed all of his shots, but they weren't terrible shots. There was one that you could argue could have been a foul at the beginning where he was like, you could say his arm got slapped. There was the wide open 3, and I'm forgetting some of the others. Had a little bit, of struggle getting into rhythm tonight. And it felt like we were in the first quarter, Ethan. Tell me what you thought about this. It felt like we were kind of running a little bit more of the older offense, like through Jakob. And I feel like that's not necessarily where he excels. I know maybe, if the game progressed, we would have ran less of that and we would have saw more of what we saw, in his 15-point first quarter in the last game out. But still defensively, though, he made some good plays. I remember in the start of the game, just 7 minutes from him. But, an interesting comparison because, in 27 minutes, homeboy not Chris Murray, that's his younger brother, Keegan Murray. He even though he got the free throws at the end, he made just as many shots as Jeremy did tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about Jeremy at all.
Me either.
7 minutes of play, and you're right. It didn't feel like we were running anything through him in those.
That's
7
what I
minutes.
was like. That was more what I was asking about because it felt like we were dumping it off to Jakob in the key, or not in the key, at the elbow.
Yeah, I can't remember specifically if that's what we were doing. I believe you, but it definitely felt like we weren't going to him as much as we were in the past 2 games. Not sure why that was, but he missed all 4 shots too. So like
You're right.
it wasn't like he was hot
He
either.
still was getting shots too. Now,
Yeah, he was
the
still
more we're
shooting. He
talking
just
about it.
wasn't hitting them. Um, yeah, and now that I'm looking at the box score here, Jude, I just want a key note for why we couldn't ever dwindle it down to like taking the lead.
Yes.
17 turnovers to Sacramento's 9. We really shot ourselves in
And
the
we didn't
foot.
get to the line. I'm so glad you said
No.
that. We had like one free throw with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and Bill
Yeah.
Land mentioned it. And Michelle Beadle and Sean Elliott were like, "What are you saying?" And they were like, "Oh, wait." Like they looked down, and I couldn't believe it either. So that's another key thing, too. And that's another thing. Like at the beginning of this, when I talked about all the key context, when you throw those two things into account, like we should have been getting blown out. So,
Mhm.
shout out to the guys hanging in there. But I see Adrian and Miles are asking about Sohan and Trey. They look very minor. Like
Yeah.
Trey, I didn't even see. It was just like out of nowhere they showed up. He was out. So definitely
Was it a
wasn't
foot?
anything major. It was his foot. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Sohan, it was his back. It got tweaked on a possession, and he kept playing through it. But then it was like when he went to the bench, he was like, "I need to go to the back." But it was well, kind of wordplay there. It's the same word, but a different
Mm.
back. He needed to go to the back to get work on his back. But
Yeah.
anyways, it neither looked very serious.
Fingers crossed. Or this
Right.
could be the we were playing a little too well in that first quarter, and we were like, let's pull these boys out real quick.
So Sohan for sure actually did get hurt. Maybe
Okay,
Trey
good.
was in that because like they showed the play like he was getting guarded by Keegan, and it was like he didn't do any. It was a non-contact thing, but it was like he
Mm.
tried to do like it wasn't a spin move, but he was putting his back to him like if it was going to be a handoff or something, and it was like while he was trying to drive around him,
Just
they
tweaked it.
showed him winced. They showed
Gotcha.
him wince. Something happened. It was non-contact, but still did not look serious at all because he played through the next couple possessions after
Adrian.
that. So what you were saying is that they're out 3 weeks minimum.
For sure. For sure.
No, right. That's what I'm thinking too. Like I'm saying these don't look that serious, but it's like, this is the opportunity for even more losses.
Absolutely. We called it last game. And we were like,
Oh my
Devin's going to come
gosh.
back, and all of a sudden everyone's going to be hurt again.
Our man Eric Pacina is in here, said Jakob has become a dunk target. Malik almost took his soul. That's so true, and that's literally exactly what Ethan texted me during the game.
Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks he's soft now because of old boy John Morant. Now everybody wants a piece
2
of him.
years in a row. Everybody's trying to. Everybody thinks their jaw.
Is
Dude, that
Jakob
was
the new?
crazy though. I
Yeah,
did not know Malik had that in his bag. I was like, oh my lord. But
yeah. I
it
knew
makes
he had
sense.
bounce, but
I'm like, okay, that's probably why he's one of the leading scorers on the third team in the West.
yeah, that was not. I
And the
knew he had
Lakers
bounce.
let him go too. I'm sorry to
Mhm.
keep interrupting you,
No,
but
you're good. You're good. I
like,
knew he had bounce, but I didn't know he had that kind of with contact kind of bounce, like over somebody,
dude.
like Blake Griffin-esque type crap. What was I gonna say about? Yeah, I was gonna say, is Jakob Poeltl just the new Sean Bradley of the NBA? Because everybody
Oh
dunked on Sean
no.
Bradley back in the day. Like it was like a sign of
Oh,
like almost like a medal if you got to
sigh.
dunk on Sean Bradley. Yeah.
Well, hopefully that moniker. Well, I mean, I say this with endearment to Jakob, but hopefully that moniker won't be in San Antonio much longer.
Yeah, it's a sign that he's at least going for the blocks, right?
Right,
That's what everyone
right.
says. He's at least
No,
trying. He's attempting it, and so I love that.
our man Keith Young says this game felt like a Yak and Jay Rich showcase. That's very accurate. You can even throw Doug in there a little bit too. Definitely got to showcase the trade pieces tonight. I was texting Ethan after the injuries, like midway through the third quarter or something. We had a lineup of Jay Rich, Stanley, Doug, Zach, and I'm forgetting somebody else, but it was and
Malachi,
KBD,
or yeah,
KBD, and I was like, this is the all vets lineup. Like we haven't seen this all year, and it's February, and this is the first time we're seeing a week away from the trade deadline. We're getting a full lineup of vets, and it's because 2 young players got injured. It was just such a like encapsulation of the season that happened in February.
So you said something that reminded me. We haven't talked about Blake Wesley yet with his baffling 4 minutes. I texted you
We
after
got
he
to
got
talk about
pulled.
Isaiah Roby too. If we're going to
Yeah,
talk about Blake.
Blake Wesley got yanked. Like Pop yanked him like he was yanking a lawnmower. Like just trying to start a lawn. Like what did he do? He had like 2 turnovers back to back that were really bad.
There was the pick and roll with him and Isaiah.
Yeah.
that
And there
just
was another one. I can't remember what it was.
I don't mean to change the subject a little bit here, but did you see Pop's face? Like, whenever he told Isaiah to get up, and Isaiah was like, "Me?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he was like, and then he like sprinted after that, but it was like Pop was like, "What do you mean, me?" He was so annoyed that Roby wasn't expecting to play. And I'm like, what else is he supposed to expect? But I get why he's like, you're an NBA player. You should always be up and ready to play. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But it's just like I felt for Roby in that situation. And when he was on the court. But back to Blake, like it's just he's got the Tony leash, man, and he's going to get
Mhm.
that treatment because they see that potential in him. You just got to think about Malachi and Jeremy at the beginning of the year. They weren't getting
Mhm.
yanked like he was, but also they were in a little. Malachi was getting yanked like Blake is. Sohan never was, but also Sohan was like it came into the season as arguably our best defender as a four. So like that's always going to keep you on the floor in San Antonio, but definitely there were some 7-minute, 4-minute games for Malachi early in the year. So that's just how we got to
Mhm.
look at Blake.
My favorite Blake moment tonight was he turned the ball over. They got they got like an easy layup, fast break layup, and he's like a little frustrated. He grabs the ball. He's about to take it out, and Pop calls a timeout. We had just come out of a timeout right before he threw that and so back to back timeouts. And Blake was like, God, like he like threw his hands up, like obviously very frustrated with himself. Oh,
Well, you know what Sean said whenever that happened? Sean was like, man, the only people, he's like, the only people I know that hate these back-to-back timeouts more than me is the players that are on the team right
yeah,
now
yeah.
who have to go through it. It's like,
Oh,
oh my gosh. Speaking of Sean, I know I always talk about Sean, but they had a pretty interesting note on the broadcast just to keep things in perspective for these young players. There's 3 players in Spurs history to be averaging 20 points and 2 threes during a season, and that's Sean Elliott, Kawhi Leonard, and Keldon Johnson. So good company for KJ for sure. I was about to say two Spurs legends, but two Spurs champions. We'll say
he's
that.
a Spurs legend. He's a Spurs legend.
Kawhi is. I know.
Yeah.
I just it
It's still bitter. I
it
still
it
hate it, but he
I
is.
don't know. We could go on a whole Kawhi rant podcast. Maybe that's something we should do in the off season and just like have a therapy session on Kawhi.
You know how they do like they did the Magic Johnson sits down with Isaiah Thomas and the Shaq and Kobe had to sit down. They're gonna have a Kawhi sits down with the entire San Antonio Spurs fan base. It's just him sitting in the center court, AT&T Center. It's full of fans, and he's like, I just wanna say y'all mean a lot to me. And we're all like crying. Like when he retires, we forgive each other.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Just getting to some other comments here. Adrian says a week from the trade deadline and our trade assets are playing the worst ball of the year. I would say that for Jakob, but I think J Rich has definitely been on a chair. So,
Yeah, I would say the same.
but this was a bounce back game for Jakob, which is kind of goes back to Keith's comment, which it was a good showcase game for those two guys tonight for the Raptors and the Celtics if they're watching. The Celtics should have been able to watch because they beat the crap out of the Nets. They should have been on the
Yeah,
sideline watching Jakob highlights.
they really should
Um,
have.
our man Eric Pacina says, off topic, do we have Charlotte's first this coming draft, which probably won't convey? I know what he's referencing here, but I want to say it's lottery protected, so I don't think there's any chance.
It is.
Yeah.
Adrian also said it in the comments. It's projected through 16, actually.
Yeah, so
So
they're right there with us right now. So
yeah, that
no chance of
sucks.
that one. That does suck.
Wait, tell me this. No, nobody will take it. I was gonna say it's not.
What other
Life's not 2K. I was gonna say, can't we still trade that pick? I was like, but nobody's gonna take it. I was like, this
Look, we're
life's
gonna
not.
turn off all the restrictions and we're gonna flip everything. And by the end, we're gonna have a roster full of all-stars and role players.
Mm. What if we? Why did we get that pick back? By the way, I can't remember
Which pick?
the Charlotte pick. What did we?
I
What was that
want to
trade?
say that may have been in the Derek trade. It had to be in the Derek trade or the DeMar trade because those are the last two
Yeah,
trades we made.
or was it?
Or
Yeah.
maybe the DeJounte. No, I think it was in the DeJounte trade. Never mind. I know that for a fact. Yeah.
Okay. It was in the Drew Eubanks trade to Minnesota when he got waived.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of Eubanks,
11,
homeboy,
11.
it's his birthday, and he also had a big poster, kind of. It
Mhm.
wasn't a poster, but it was a pretty crazy dunk against the Grizzlies,
He
and
looked like Air Jordan.
he
He had
was
his legs
talking
out.
he was talking mess, and the sideline was going crazy. It was nice to I really like the Grizzlies, but it was nice to see like the Grizzlies get the other side of that. You
Mm.
know what I mean?
I've grown to just have such a disdain
I
for
know
them.
everybody doesn't like him. I do. I
Oh,
love it.
I
I
used
honestly
to.
love it.
I think it's something to do with how Dylan Brooks looks.
Okay, Dylan Brooks is super annoying for sure.
Hi
But I really
his
like Jaw. Like I like the
I love
smack that they
Jaw.
talk.
I
But
love Jaw and Steven Adams and JJJ. I don't care for Bane and Brooks. I think they are like, ugh, ugh.
at least Desmond Bane's like good. That's
Yeah,
the
he's
thing. Like
good, but he still
and
bugs me.
Brooks is good too, but he's not as good as Desmond Bane. Anyways, we'll get back to the Spurs here.
Yeah.
Um Not really many more thoughts on this game, Ethan. I mean,
No,
it's
not for
like
me.
their sixth man balled out, and that's Malik Monk's role on this team. And De'Aaron and DeBonis played like they should play against a bottom of the league team with a bunch of injuries, and they're the third seed in the West.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Not much else to say about it.
Well, we didn't really talk about Isaiah Roby.
Well, there's nothing really to talk about.
2 for 2, baby. That's what
Yeah,
matters.
he hit a couple shots, but you texted me. He's like so skilled, but he clearly doesn't know where he's supposed to be.
He doesn't know what he's doing at
Yeah,
all. Yeah. Poor guy.
poor guy.
Okay. Well, looking at some of the Spurs' schedule moving forward, Ethan, I know that you're going to be at the game on Friday.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm sure you're excited
Very.
to an extent. I'm sure you're just excited in general, but um, I guess you know what there is hope for that game. I'm making it very dire here, Ethan. But not only does Harden have his history of struggles against us, not saying that's going to happen this Friday because it probably won't. But the Sixers did just split 2 games with the Magic.
Hmm.
Magic are better than us, but not much better than us. So maybe there's a chance. Maybe there's a chance.
I don't know. Zach Collins is gonna have to lock up Embiid. You know what we should do? We should bring Jonathan Simmons in on a 10-day so he can scare James Harden a little bit. Have him come bouncing out of the
Is
tunnel
Gorgie
like,
gone? I didn't even think about
yeah,
that.
yeah, he's gone.
No.
We technically have a roster spot, so
Yes,
sign
Jonathan
Jonathan Simmons to a
Simmons.
10-day, and then bring Manu in just to like wave, and then James Harden will like shiver and
No,
be looking over his shoulder.
we'll have Manu get honored that night. We'll have him on the
Mm.
broadcast, so he'll come on the court. You know, James
Is he
Harden
really?
will. Oh no! Well,
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
saying for the
You're just
50th
spitballing.
year
Okay.
thing.
Yeah,
You know how we've
I
been
thought tonight
having.
was Manu night.
Well, it was Manu bobblehead night, but we had Nazir Muhammad on
Oh
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
on the
Yeah,
broad.
sorry,
Anyways,
you're
the point is we're bringing in people in this 50-year
yeah.
broadcast, right? So we
Mhm.
can. I'm just saying we can get him closer to the court. We don't need him to wave. We can make a whole big deal about it. So it's
Mm,
really in James's head. You know what I mean?
I
He's
like
just
that.
there, and we should just play the block in Game 6 over and over again, just so he just
Heck yeah.
he's mentally destroyed.
I miss Jonathan Simmons. On
That's
the
so
real, we should bring
sick.
him back. Yeah, he's just
I
oh,
hope you get shout out to James Harden. I hope you're not mentally destroyed in life just when you play the Spurs.
there we go. That's what we want.
Okay, here's a good point from our man Adrian. He says we did beat Philly early in the year. So there's definitely a chance, but that also might mean they're coming for revenge.
They've been on
And
a
they're on a
roll.
tear.
Yeah, they've been
Oh,
on a
there's no
roll.
chance. I don't know why I'm trying to talk myself into this. This is the point we're at in the season.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
final thoughts on this one, Ethan?
Go Spurs go. I hope that Sohan and Trey are back soon because if they're not there, we definitely don't have a chance.
We're back to purgatory. I'm glad you said that because I think that's probably the most important thing from this game is if they're out for an extended period of time. We saw what happened the first time Trey was out. You compile Sohan into that with the way that we've kind of been relying on him with the way that he's been playing. The good news is it means more L's and
Mm-hmm.
keeping those lottery odds. The bad news is it's going to be ugly and won't be as fun to watch as it's kind of been of late. That would just be so typical for this season, wouldn't it, Ethan?
It would be.
It would. All right, y'all. Well, we appreciate y'all hanging out with us tonight on SSPN Postgame. We'll be back with more lives, more postgames, probably next week, maybe something this weekend. Actually, now that I think about it, I'll be pretty busy this weekend. But check out the Austin Spurs game tomorrow at 7 and watch our boy Dom Barlow. Maybe Charles Bassey's down there playing as well. I know he might have had an injury also. So injury bug once again hits. You mentioned it yesterday, and it happened the next game. So Ethan knows what he's talking about. Listen to him. If y'all enjoyed our content, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to stay updated with the show, follow us on Twitter. You can watch it on @SSPN on YT and follow us @Jude McLaren @Ethan_Quintero to stay updated to the show. We appreciate y'all. At least the Spurs are staying competitive, even when two of their most key players are injured. That's all that we can, look at as of right now. We'll see y'all in the